Hey, David, welcome to the show. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Lacey. It's really a joy, exciting to be here, talk to your audience.
This topic, I feel like a lot of people have heard it, but maybe don't know the nuances of being an executor or having an executor for your estate. So I wanted to start with what actually is an executor and what are the duties that come along with that title?
Ooh, that's a big question at the top. Well, to break it down, is the executor is going to be the individual who's been given the responsibility to look after an individual's estate, which would be the testator, the person's who will it is, whose estate it is. And what you're asking them to do, which is a big giant favor, is to make sure that your wishes and everything that you want to be passed on to the next generation, to your beneficiaries, will be done specifically to what you want them to do. So your executor is sort of the quarterback of the estate. Um, and if you're picking someone to be an executor, you also have to take in consideration that you're asking them to do a pretty big favor, because the majority of the time it takes an individual to take at least 100 hours of their time, and then another 18 to 24 months just to settle the estate. That's on average. In my case, it was over 7 years. So if you're picking someone, you want to make sure that the estate will be closed with the least amount of problems, not only with the government, but also in terms of talking to the beneficiaries and keeping the family together.
Do executors get paid to do you that huge favor?
Majority of the time, no, because a lot of times the executor is the beneficiary, so you're actually kind of double dipping. But if you are not a beneficiary, it's not out of the realm to ask to charge the estate. As an executor, yes, you can be paid, but majority of the time, an executor is usually the beneficiary, so they're probably going to be benefiting from the estate. If you haven't left a provision that the executor will be paid, an executor can charge the estate something reasonable for their time and effort to settle the estate. Or you might put in your will that you want to leave a dollar amount or a percentage of the estate to the executor. Either way, you must report that to the IRS as income.
You wrote the book Executor Help. What was the inspiration or the reason why you decided to help other people prepare their estates with an executor?
Well, what happened to me in my case, it took my family, or myself and siblings, 7 years, 10 court appearances, and $50,000 to settle our parents' estate, and they had a will. And when I was going through that time, it was pretty troubling, and it was hard on the family because there was the estate fight, and I'd always hear about a family not speaking, or an executor telling me how they were having problems in court dealing with beneficiaries. So I didn't want people to go through what I went through, so I wrote the book during COVID, because this is a problem. I'm not gonna. Yeah, it is actually a dirty little secret that a lot of families don't want to talk about. They usually avoid the problem. They'll procrastinate and put it off, or they just won't have any conversations. And when you put aside, or you don't do anything, or you avoid the one thing that life guarantees, which is our death, you put the family in danger. And right now, our courts are filled with families fighting over cottages, businesses, money, homes, and that's because there wasn't any estate plan, there wasn't any conversations within the family, and we end up with broken families. I have a friend who, his brother, they don't talk to each other because over Royal Dalton, China. Mother had left it to his wife, and when when they're cleaning out the home, the brother asked his brother, "Well, can I have the Royal Dalton China? Give it to your niece." He says, "Well, go talk to my wife." The wife refused, and he came back and said some disparaging remarks about my friend's wife, and they haven't spoken for over 25 years because of Royal Dalton China, because there was no conversations. So families will, with the illusion that, well, we have no problems, we all get along, but don't fool yourself. You really don't know about somebody until you have to share an inheritance with them.
Are you saying the dirty little secret is people not discussing and preparing for what happens to your estate after death?
Absolutely. There's three types of families. There's a family that's going to not talk about death because if you talk about death, somebody's going to die. So it's never talked about. It's sort of taboo. Then there's a family that, yes, there's going to be a will, but nobody knows where it is. Nobody knows what's in it. And then what happens is they let the paperwork do the talking. And because there was no conversations, then there's hurt feelings. There's court cases and people going to court because they misinterpret what the spirit of the will is, and they a lot of times blame the executor for that, where the executor is just following what the will says. And then the third type of family is a family that's going to have ongoing conversations. That it's okay to help people understand that we're all going to die, and we're making provisions so that when these unexpected emergencies happen, that we're not going to leave the family lost or disorganized or in chaos.
You touched on one thing there that leads to my next question. What are some of the challenges that come with being an executor? And specifically for the military community, you mentioned that the executor is just following the instructions. So if they're not good instructions, that's going to be a challenge because people are going to blame them. What are some other things?
Well, military personnel, they face some unique challenges, but the principles of estate planning, they all remain the same. First and foremost, that you have to make sure that you have a will. 60% of Americans don't have a will. So if you don't have a will, then something happens, you die intestate, which means the government has a plan for you. So you have to make sure, because of the uniqueness of relocations and people moving around in the military, having the military life, you have to make sure that you have a will and start there. The next thing is selecting the right executor is crucial. The person that's going to be responsible for carrying out your wishes. It's important to choose somebody that's going to be trustworthy, that's going to be organized, and they're also going to be capable of handling the responsibilities. And that's for a lot of people, that's really tough. You might want to consider someone who understands the unique challenges, like I said before, the military can present, who can communicate effectively with the whole family, who may understand the problems with the dynamics of the family. Military families often experience frequent relocations, so it's important and crucial that you keep your estate plan up to date and current with every time you move. Maybe there's an addition to the family, or there's an executor has passed away and they predecease you. You might want to make changes there. And then the other thing is that you also want to make sure that you integrate your overall plan and take advantage of all the death benefits, the survivor benefits, and the life insurance that's within the military benefits. And to do that, you should talk with an estate planning lawyer and some other professionals that are going to help you make sure that your estate plan is cohesive, it makes sense in your situation, and so that you don't leave your family disorganized and in chaos.
You mentioned picking an executor. You should look at somebody that's trustworthy. What are some other skills that they should have? And when you're picking an executor, does it change if you have minor children or special needs family members when it comes to your estate planning?
Absolutely. The executor could do, for like if we talk about children or someone with special needs, the executor could make sure that the will is being followed, but you might choose a guardian for the children and or for the person with the special needs, so that it could be two different people. But that's why you would have the discussion, with your spouse in terms of what are we looking for in the guardian? Who can we rely on if we want the children to be looked after? The executor can make sure that there is the will is going to follow to what your wishes are if both of you are gone. But it's the guardian could be somebody different. I had a friend of mine. She recently updated her will, and that's because she remembered what happened to her when her father had passed away. Her mother was already gone, and when she was 9 years old, she remembers in the funeral home of the parking lot, her aunt took her, and her uncle took her brother. Another uncle took her brother, and even though she's a mature woman right now and has a business, she also remembers that even though anything would happen in the, as she was growing up, needed school supplies or anything like that, because her father died without a will, her guardian, which was an aunt, she always had to go petition to the court to get money from the government to make sure that she's being taken care of.
When should you select an executor? If somebody right now doesn't have a will, doesn't have an, because you need a will to have an executor, right? Let's be clear on that. You just don't pick an executor to manage something that's not created yet. You need to have a will, and then when do you
Well,
pick
it's
that
gonna.
person, and how do you have that discussion with them?
Okay, so I would say it's a three step process. First, get the will taken care of. So, meet with a professional, and could be a estate planning attorney, or there's a lot of, depending on your situation, it might be very simple. There's a lot of online solutions where you could have a will done. Figure out which one makes sense. Once you've got that, then you want to have the conversation with the executive, the person that you've chosen. Don't leave it to a surprise and they get a phone call one day and say, oh, by the way, you're an executor. Have a conversation with them and say, you know what, I've chosen you as an executor. I'd like you to do this favor for me, because I feel that if something was to happen, unexpected emergency, that you would be the individual that I want to make sure that my wishes are carried out. So you want to make them, help them. You need an executor when you're dead, but you need to prepare them while they're alive. Prepare them while you're alive. So you need to prepare them and let them know where their will is going to be kept. You want to talk to them about your digital assets. We spend a lot of time online, but we never really think about all of those where our email addresses are kept, our logins and our passwords. For every one email address, there's at least 130 digital identities related to that one email address, which means Amazon, YouTube, Facebook. If something was to happen, where are we going to have access to those logins and passwords? How are we going to get into the cell phone, the laptop, the computer? So besides the will, you want to have a list of your digital assets prepared and let the executor know. You also want the same thing with your healthcare directives. So you want to have that and let the executor know, if something was to happen, I've got a bright yellow folder in this filing cabinet or wherever you're going to keep it, but it's a bright colored envelope, because when there's trauma, there's an unexpected emergency, people can't find things. They're traumatized. Make it easy on the executor, make it easy on the family. So I've got that bright yellow envelope. In there, you're going to find insurance policies, the will, healthcare directives, and also my logins and passwords. You prepared the executor as much as best you can, and then you want to have the conversation with the family. Don't leave it to chance and put everything on the executor. Have it, if something was to happen, this is who the executor is. This is who I've chosen as the executor. And now I want you to understand how I want my estate to be settled. You don't want to put any pressure on the executor. It doesn't take much for any beneficiary who want to take an executor to court because they feel that something's not going right with the estate.
What are your tips for people to start conversations about death for those that are uncomfortable with the subject matter, but you want to start making those plans, getting your estate in order, picking your executor, but maybe other people that you need to be part of that discussion aren't ready to have it just yet?
It's, well, a while ago, a couple came to me and they were in that same sort of situation. They know that they needed to do something because there was that anxiety, what would happen to us if we didn't do anything. And what I said to them is that you want to be remembered you don't want to be remembered for what you didn't do. So they took it upon themselves to say, yes, we need to have get our will in place. We're going to have the conversation with our executor. They're going to talk to their family members or their children. You have to pick a time when it's going to be the best time to do. Is there ever a good time? No. But you need to bring it up and let them understand that, you're doing this because if an unexpected emergency happens, if there's a death or something, the family needs to be kept together. We need to have a plan. Is a plan going to be perfect? Absolutely not, because nothing in life is perfect. But at least you're putting together sort of a blueprint of what needs to happen if something was to happen, so that people aren't going to be left lost. They're not going to know, and they're going to be grieving, but they're going to at least know, okay, we've had this conversation. Is this the sexiest topic, Lacey, that you've had on with people on your show? Absolutely not. There's hundreds of other things people would rather be talking about. But when it does happen, families can be broken up, and you need to have those conversations. They're going to be uncomfortable, but you know what? It doesn't have to be, one conversation one time. It needs to evolve. The great, families that stay together are used to having these conversations. There's communication. They understand this is just the evolution of life. So it's hard, but you need to make sure that you're going to be remembered for what you did do and not what you didn't do.
You touched on families. In your book, you discuss the triangle of conflict. For people that haven't read it, can you touch on what that is?
Yeah. Well, any executor that's going to have a problem, I came up with the triangle conflict, and I notice this all the time. It's either there's a second marriage, the family don't get along, or there's absolutely no will. If an executor it comes across one or two of those, there's going to be a major problem. So again, it comes back to being prepared, having conversations, have the conversations that matter. You know what? You don't want your legacy to be based on silence. You want to make sure that you're leaving a legacy, that you're not leaving a legacy that's going to be full of mess and problems. So people need to think about what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind. And the only way you're going to do that is to be prepared. Again, not the most sexy topic to talk about, but it needs to be addressed. And far too many families are being broken up. Like I said, families are being damaged today because they're all in court fighting over stuff, over dollars, over homes, and this all could have been averted just by having conversations.
I think picking an executor is a hard decision because it seems like a permanent decision. Like, this is the person that's going to be in charge of my will. Can people change their mind if something maybe about their relationship with the executor changes, or a life situation? Maybe the executor has something where they're not going to be able to fill that pretty well later. Can you change your executor?
You can change your executor because at the end of the day, it's your estate. You can do whatever you want. I'll flip it the other way. If you're asked to be an executor and you know the family dynamics, or you don't feel you're going to be up to the job, you can say no. You don't have to say yes to this. A friend of mine, she was asked to be an executor of her uncle's estate. She wasn't told about it. She got a phone call from a lawyer, and the lawyer said that your uncle wants to be the executor of the estate. She knew the dynamics of the family, of her cousins, and she wrote back a letter, and she told him over the phone, "I'm not going to do it. I renounce the opportunity to be the executor." So you don't have to say yes, but that's why you need to think about who you're choosing and why you're choosing them.
Does there have to be somebody you know, or if you know your family is going to be a hot mess, can you pay somebody outside of your family to be an executor?
Yes, I like how you said hot mess. Yes, everybody, because everybody comes with the illusion, oh, my family's perfect, we don't get along. You know how everybody's family, at holidays how everybody gets. And you know what? Maybe an hour or two of them, I'm good. So yes, the hot mess reference is absolutely right. You can choose, there's banks and trust companies that will take on the responsibility to be a professional executor, and you can do that too, but you have to take in consideration there's going to be costs for it. And, there's pros and cons to it. If you choose a friend or a family member to be an executor, you're choosing them to you're going to have to prepare them a little bit more than if you got a professional like at a bank or a trust company, and that makes it easier when you have the bank or trust company. Understand that there's the costs, and they don't have the emotional attachment. They don't know the family dynamics, so they're just treating this as a business, and they're going to it may take a little longer to get things done because again they aren't in the business of feelings. They're only in the business of settling the estate. So beneficiaries may have a different sort of relationship with a bank or a trust company executor, a professional, than they would a family member or a friend.
People probably see, though, if you pay somebody and they work for a bank, that they are professional and they are neutral. That they haven't been there for all the family fights, so aren't invested in those nuances of everything. So I could see if like I said, your family's a hot mess, you know you're setting a family member up or a friend for trouble for a couple of years, you might just prefer to give it to, even though there is that expense, give it to somebody else because you don't want to put that on a family member. Yeah, that's a really good thing to think about, keeping the family together. If that's more important, then it might be a little bit more money invested. So, well, I have a couple of quick random questions I ask everybody. First off, what is one resource or tool that you use that makes your life easier?
I think I have to say right now, ChatGPT. You know, it's allowed me to be a bit more creative, makes me think outside the box. And I think the key to using it is to have the right prompts. Because, you know, if you use ChatGPT, just put in garbage, you're just going to get garbage out. So it's important to, you know, have an idea of what you're trying to accomplish and put in the right, what they call prompt engineering, and make sure you have the right prompts in to get out some, you know, interesting content and get your mind flowing. So right now, I'd have to say I'm a fan of ChatGPT.
What's your favorite book right now or your favorite book of all time?
Wow. Um, Ooh, I didn't expect this one. I, I can't think of one right off the top of my head. You know, anything that you know, as you know, you're a content provider. I come across so many different books. You know, Joe Sehy, Stacked Benjamins. I had him on the show, my show recently. His book was great. You know, there's so many books I can. You know, I can't think of one. You caught me there. I surrender. I don't know. I can't think of one besides my own. Okay. Um,
Okay, well, that leads me to my favorite part of the podcast, which is game time. And today, in honor of your visit, we're going to be playing a mixed bag of trivia and fact or fiction. So, I found a really fun research study done by One Poll and Trust and Will, and it's all about what do people want to inherit. So, I'm going to give you a mix of some fact or fiction and trivia questions, and you have to guess which one's the correct one. If you get 3 out of the 5 questions correct, you get bragging rights that you won game time on the Military Money Show.
okay. Wow. All right.
Okay. Are
Let
you
me wipe
ready?
my
Yeah.
my brow there, and let's go.
Okay. Number one, one third or 32% of Americans haven't considered what happens to their assets when they die. Is that fact or fiction, according to this poll? One
Fact.
third of America. Yes, that is true. It is a fact. One third of Americans haven't considered what happens to their assets when they die. Got the first
Okay.
one. Number two, 71% of people polled are nervous about their private matters coming out in let me do that again. Number two, 71% of people polled are nervous about their private matters coming out in their will after their death. Is that fact or fiction?
Fact.
That is a fact. People are really worried about their business getting out there with their will. I guess that's a plug for trusts if you want to keep it private.
Correct.
Okay, number three. So you got two for two. Number three. What do people want to inherit the most? Is it A, family heirlooms, B, pets, or C, a house or property?
I'd say house or property.
That is correct. Out of this poll, 65% of people want to receive a house or property, which I was surprised. Number two was pets at 59%, which I thought like I wouldn't want to, but I could see a family, you know, if you've had a family pet for a very long time. But if somebody I didn't know was like, hey, I want to leave you a dog, I would be like, I don't know if I want to take on that responsibility. So I was surprised by that.
Ironically, that's actually a chapter in the book, what to do with your furry members of the family. And that wasn't in the original draft. But people started asking those questions. I'm like, that's interesting. So that's why I talk about that in the book. Because pets they're right up there.
Yes. And
Ooh.
it's proven too by you and this poll. Okay, so you
Okay.
got 3 for 3. Number 4, What percentage of people would rather save money for future generations than spend all of their money while they're alive? So they're saying, I
Oh,
don't want to spend everything I make. I want to save some to pass on to other people. So is it A, 55%, B, 47%, or C, 25%? This one might be a little harder, David.
I'm gonna go with A, 55%.
That's incorrect. The correct answer is 47%, which I still was surprised by that many people would rather, save something for other people. I thought it was going to be more in the 20s, but again, the poll no showed a lot of almost half of people want to leave something cash wise for their future generation.
Which is still
Okay,
ironic
so you
to
missed
your,
one.
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was only gonna say, which is ironic that they want to leave money, and yet so many people don't have a will.
Yes.
But,
So
okay,
true.
go on.
So true. That's a good point. Okay, number five. What percentage of people know the difference between a will and a trust? Is it A, 59%, B, 45%, or C, 32%? Also, this one I thought was a little harder.
B.
No, it's A. It's
I was gonna go.
59%.
I was gonna go
Yeah,
A, and
I was
I went A last time. Okay, right.
Yeah, no, I thought that was a really great number. I mean, if people, almost 60% of people do know the difference. So, well, you got two wrong, but you still got three
I
right. So
got
that
three
means you have
right.
bragging rights. Yep. So you
Yeah,
win
okay.
bragging rights that you won game time on the Military Money Show.
Oof. And I
Yep.
don't take the honor lightly. I, I,
Thank you, David. Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, thank you for being on the show and playing the game. Can you tell everybody listening where they can learn more about you and what you're up to?
you can just go to my website, David Edey. That's edey.com, and on there you can. I've got free resources like a executor checklist. I've got a quiz. What kind of family are you? And I've also got a free chapter of the book, and also what else I got? Oh, and the 50 questions executors have, and they get answered. So you can download that. And then there's articles on being an executor in my newsletter. So everything you need to know about, preserving and making sure that your family stays together. When it comes to estate and legacy planning, you'll find it at my website.
Wonderful. I'll be sure to put links to all of that in the show notes for everybody. Thank you again, David.